At you directly from sunny Portugal. So as you can see, I've got a beautiful backdrop. Part of the team has worked here remotely a couple of weeks and part in the UK. So it's been an amazing experience, but more about that in another tutorial and another video. I hope you enjoy this. Let's get this started.
So we've divided this up into three simple parts. The first part, understanding colors. What composes a color? You know, what are the basic elements of a color? Second part, color harmonies, how these color harmonies work, and a few basic examples where you can see a couple of color harmonies that we've chosen that are considered to be, I think, the main ones, at least in our work. And the third part is color harmonies and their importance in creating moods, how these can kind of create some amazing atmospherics, how you can take advantage of color harmonies to really give something special to your image. So with no further ado, let's get cracking. So as you can see on screen, we have our basic color wheel, and our basic color wheel is basically composed of three elements. So we have our hue, which is our fully saturated color along this color wheel. We have our saturation, so on the outside fully saturated. As we go on the inside, we're tending towards zero saturation, and our value that is also referred to as brightness. So a really interesting thing in Photoshop, if you double click here, is you actually get your color picker. And if I sample, let's say I sample here, you get an exact demonstration of what we have here. And now the great thing about this is it actually tells you the values. So as you can see, your hue all along this is the same hue, so should be the same, 180. And you have your saturation levels. So as you go inside the color wheel, you tend towards pure white, and at the bottom, you tend towards pure black. So it's a really interesting thing to see that this is actually a full cutout. So imagine infinite planes that are cutting along this color wheel, and that's what you get. Now, there's another really interesting element to colors, which is the value and the brightness of them. And now I've linked a couple of videos that actually showed where I got this, and I found this to be really interesting. So certain colors have certain values and brightness to them. So you'll see that our yellows and oranges do appear to be in the brighter, especially the yellows are in the brighter spectrum, as well as the greens. Now our blues cover a wider spectrum of values, so that's why when we get to these blues, they do appear quite dark to us, but you can never have a yellow that really goes that dark. It just starts becoming an orange almost. So this is another really important thing when you're saturating elements, and you want to saturate someone's shirt to a yellow. You see that the yellow only really covers this spectrum. So on to our color harmonies. So color harmonies can be understood as a pleasing arrangement of colors to the eye. Now this has not been done just recently. This is many hundreds of years old, and artists much before us have understood how these colors come together and how they can make for a pleasing arrangement and striking composition. So as you can see, this Caravaggio and this Rembrandt. So the first of our color harmonies is going to be the complementary colors. So complementary, what is it? So these are basically colors that are just on opposite ends of the spectrum. So I bring up my Adobe Color Theme by just going to Extensions and Adobe Color Themes, and I'll hit here complementary. So this just says that basically colors that are opposite ends of the spectrum complement each other. Now on this one in particular, if we let's ignore a little bit of what's going on the outside, and let's just focus on the inside, you can see that we have basically our blues, our quite heavy blues, and our oranges, which are quite saturated and almost towards the outside. Now there is some space for a little bit of deviation here, so it doesn't have to be like 100%. There is a little bit of deviation, and you can go into other color schemes if you include this red, but you can see it's heavily saturated, and they really are pleasing to the eye, especially if you include these reds and you deviate a little bit, and you're almost going to split complementary, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I mean, another example, Bertrand Benoit, and now this one is a 3D image that it's quite famous, and I remember from back in the day. Now you've got these nice saturated blues that are on the left, complementing this very warm interior, really making for a beautiful, striking image. Again, Fernand Guerre, something that's, he's a famous photographer, and this is something that's a little more subdued. So you've got your blues, and you've got your nice desaturated warms here, so you're probably looking at something a little bit more like this, a little more towards the inside, but still nonetheless very pleasing. I mean, again, another very saturated example from Fernando Guerrero, which has these blues on the outside and these very nice warms on the inside. But this can also be applied to other things. So for our sketch, you can see the blues, and I'll just bring that up, and the greens, and you can see actually if I load that up from sampling, you can see almost all the colors being used here. And again, we do this most of the times, I guess unconsciously, because we tend to understand what looks good and doesn't look good with experience. But nonetheless, it's good to put a bit of science behind this. Now, another image from Alex Hogref, which I truly like. Again, a little more subdued, but we have these reds and these blues. They almost deviate a little bit, but still nonetheless, it looks really nice. It looks really beautiful. We've got all these tones within the blue range, greeny range, and we've got this red that really works nicely. So a thorough understanding of color. Next on our list are the split complementaries. Now, split complementaries are basically very easy. So you have your key color, which is basically the color that leads, and you have two colors in front, so very similar to complementary, but that are just slightly further apart. Now, I wanted to show you a really good website whilst I'm on here, and this website is Adobe Cooler. So Adobe Cooler or Adobe Color, depends how you pronounce it, is a really good way of basically loading up your complementaries, your monochromatics, your various color rules and color harmonies. So you can see how they're actually made up. Now, I've taken this image from Thomas Dubois, a really amazing artist, and I've loaded that up into Adobe Cooler, and it already somehow tells me a little on what's going on. So we've got that major tone, that's the blue, and then you've got the others, the almost purple, and you've got the oranges and the warm hues. Now these can be a little bit distant, but it tells me what's happening in the image when I create it from the image. So as you can see, again, you've got these warm hues that are more like this, and then you've got this blue and this green tone that are really happening in here. Now this is a really nice subdued image, and it's so simple. I mean, it's quite monochromatic, and you've got these really nice touches of color. So we don't always have to really saturate. You can get these really nice tones. Next, you can see here as well, you can make this work for you. This is one of our images. You can make this work for you in various elements. So you can make it work through your people, through spots of color. So we've got this blue. In this one, we've probably got something more like this, where we have this blue tinge and blue tone that goes through the whole image. Then we've got this nice saturated reds, and also these nice saturated oranges, which are on the outside, and the blues from the people. Now, this creates a very nice split complementary. On to our next one, Alex Hogref. So you can see again, you've got this blue tinge, and you've got these really saturated reds almost around here. And then you've got these other oranges and yellows, which are warm, and this blue purplish tinge. Now this is not exact. Some of these might split into other harmonies, but I'm just kind of trying to simplify here. Again, you can also see this in Rembrandt's images and in images that are hundreds of years old, and just how they were starting to use these colors and understand how colors went together. Again, you've got these almost oranges here, these dark reds, and then you've got these very light yellows, which also push your eye towards the center and the focal center. And last but not least, our analogous color harmony. So analogous color harmony basically says that these are all colors that are on a similar spectrum. So I've just loaded up this painting from Albert Bierstadt from I believe from the Hudson River School, and as you can see, all the tones are quite similar. So all around these. Now these can go a little bit further out or a little bit further in. Also, again, lovely to mention that this can be used in various types of applications. I can see this one, one of Alex Hogref's piece, which is a reference for many other artists, as well as one of our own, which is a night shot, and you can see all those orange tones that are quite close to each other and really do show what's going on. And final but not least is the laptop one, which also has very similar tones. So this can be really interesting to actually have and start off your image like this, and then let's imagine that I want to make something completely out of the ordinary. So I'm going to just I'm gonna actually, let me work on one of our own just in case. And if I really want to make a striking element and understand how this can kind of use color harmony to our own advantage, I can just select this. Now I'm thinking what can really stand out here, and I'm going to say that could be a complementary color. So I'm going to bring out the hue saturation, just colorize this, saturate, and you can see that it's still pleasing to the eye. So this is just a couple ways of showing you just how colors really can quickly influence and make for something really special that indeed can help you just add that extra oomph to your pieces. So last but not least is really understanding how color can almost form a mood. It can be symbolic, it can create a movie, how it can really influence us in many ways and be so important in any creation. So I have one of the artists that he's one of my favorite artists. So his name is G-Monk, and he's worked on concept art for Tron. He also does motion graphics. That's what he's most known for, and he's worked on a lot of commercials. But in particular, this piece I have on board is the Tron series, and it's just amazing, his use of color. And Tron is so symbolic in the aspect that it uses the blues to symbolize the positive, good side, and uses the yellows to really symbolize that bad side. So it's a very symbolic movie that colors play a huge role in, and we all have in our mind once Tron goes up, that blue hue in our brain. So it's really symbolic in that. Another great artist is Beeple. Now I met Beeple at D2 in Vienna, Austria, and his stuff is just amazing. This guy's been doing a daily image for like 10 years. So his use of color, the way that he understands color, the way that he brings it together is through experimentation, 10 years of experimentation. So it's really crazy just how good his stuff is. And he's a major reference. If you ever want inspiration, really just go for it. And again, another example, this time in ArchViz laptop, you see that striking red. This image is basically just a neutral palette with this red and orange, very analogous almost, and just how symbolic it is. And this just to show you, it doesn't have to be 100% photoreal, but color can be really important in transmitting an idea, in bringing something together. I mean, look at this neutral palette, and then you've got these, the purple and the red and how they're done, and you've got almost this triangle of color which really leads your eye. So interesting how people resolve different things in different ways. I mean, Fernand Guerre's image of a scissors project, and you can see just this red and orange and how striking, how they're leading. So you've got the story, you've got the composition, but then you have all these really small things, the police on the right, these guys in blue on the left. So there's subtleties that are really finessed down to a very small level. I mean, you can go through this. Thomas Madv, you've probably seen some of his work from Mir. Again, you have this striking palette that's there's very neutral palette, but then you have this striking orange which leads your eye straight away, and you start to understand the story of this guy looking up. And then you've got a spot of color which really leads your eye into the center of this image. And then there's this striking Luxagon image which I just love. Again, it's almost symbolical in the way that it's done. These touches of red and blue and these colors that are around this complementary and split complementary idea and how they work. It's all about positives and negatives. Again, same thing. Look at that yellow. It's that orange. It's almost an expression here. It's not exactly a photoreal image. It's more about the expression and the symbolic nature of how this interacts with the architecture. Once again, from Luxagon. So you can see really how colors really help manipulate an idea, a concept. I mean, once you get your lighting, once you get your composition, colors really can play a super important role, how you understand the piece and how symbolic you make it. You know, you can see this is quite noir, and this red really gives it a kind of a city noir look. So that's definitely what they were going for with the rain and everything. And this splash of color just makes it, I mean, this could be a normal image and it could all have a neutral tone, very analogous type colors, but no, it's split up with this red, which really shows force and really expression of it. So I'm going to leave you with these final tips, and these are kind of my favorite tips on color in an image. So always start from a neutral desaturated palette. Remember, when you create your renders, if you do a neutral desaturated palette, you can always build up saturation. So almost like a painting, you can build color. Secondly, don't oversaturate. So I see a lot of images that have too many colors, that are too saturated. The hues are way too saturated. They're way too close to the purity of the hue, and that really doesn't work too well. Thirdly, choose a key color. So sometimes it's simpler to just start with a key color. So as you saw that laptop image with that red or the analogous colors, it's always easier to start with a key color. And fourth of all, choose a color harmony that complements your mood and output. So if you got this very bluish, nightish type of view, and it works really well in showing the interior spaces, you can have that exterior with the blue, and you can have the interior with the nice warmth. So really make the color work for you. So thank you very much everyone for listening to this tutorial. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel. I'll try and put out as much of these as we can, really. It's a team effort, and we're trying to find the time to do them. This year I'm going to be attending the Trojan Horse Unicorn, and I will be speaking at 3D Symposium in Barcelona. So if you guys are around, just give me a shout out. I'd also like to give a big shout out to everyone I met at D2 conference in Austria, Fabio and Jason. That was an amazing conference, and if you guys can go, please give it a go next year. I've left a few links down below, so you know, I've talked a lot about the videos that I've looked at, etc. So I've linked all those below, and yeah, just